kratak predah, a sada nastavljamo polako dalje. Sledi kompanija Cisco. Prezentacija se zove Threat Centric Security. Gospodin George Jaks govorit će o aktualnim napadima kao i zaštiti na nivou anti-malvera i DNS. Izvolite.
Dobro jutro. Unfortunately, my Bosnian is not too strong, so if you don't mind, I switch to English because probably everybody has a better chance to understand me. So let me introduce myself. My name is György. I'm originally came from Hungary. I'm supporting this region, even from Poland until Bulgaria, so it's quite a huge region. And I'd like to introduce this kind of threat-centric security. But before we are going into jump into the very technical details and the overview, the solutions, let me ask, what is your view? What is the most important question nowadays? So what you are really thinking in every single day about the new threats? At least several colleagues, I'm absolutely sure they are thinking about this question. Should I pay? Probably everybody knows what I am thinking on, actually the ransomware. So ransomware is a huge topic. The previous speaker also mentioned this IoT stuff. Definitely will happen everywhere in the IoT world as well. So definitely the ransomware currently is a huge problem, and it will be the huge problem for the future. So definitely somehow we need to build your defense, and even not just defense, if something is happen, what we will do, this kind of strategy. So my session is about how this ransomware works, basically. If you have never seen this kind of ransomware, yeah, you will see now. But absolutely sure, even on your PC or your friend's PC, you've seen a few ones. A few latest ones I'd like to introduce, mainly what is the common thing in this ransomware area and how they work. What is the industry, because we can call it as an industry, a whole industry about ransomware. And what can we do against the ransomware? So this is the three major topics what I'd like to cover here. Regarding the ransomware, it's a huge business for the cyber criminals. Just in 2016, the total loss was 1 billion because of the ransomware. So it's a totally huge business. They act as a real enterprise. They have really specialized systems and developers. They have a support service. The victims can call the ransomware companies, supporting the technical help. So this is a huge business. Just a few numbers regarding the profitability. So regarding one very nice example, this is Angler. That was the exploit kit. Finally, it is already shut it down, thanks to this security intelligence working in the Cisco. So, but the total loss was close to 60 million. Just one single exploit kit, which actually distributed different ransomware softwares. So this is the huge business, and it will be a huge business for the future. If you see the history, we can see this kind of picture. So everything is started like 1989 when we had a floppy disk, if you remember. So that time the floppy disk was the distribution vector when the cyber criminals distributed the ransomwares. Several years back, it was not so serious, the attack. What I wanted to highlight here is the CBT locker. This is my idea that everything is started at that time when this CBT locker, if you remember that one, offered a free Windows 10 upgrade. So everybody seen the future, okay, why not? I need a Windows 10 upgrade free of charge. So that was a lot of victims. From that point, cyber criminals understood this could be a huge business. So if you heard about the crypto locker, crypto wall, Tesla Crypt, there are different versions and different type of encryption technology they used. Nowadays, at least in my country, the lock is quite active. So that's also very important. And I like to highlight here this very new area, which is the SAMSAM. If you heard about the SAMSAM, which is represented a totally new approach in the ransomware industry. Why? Because previously, was it an enterprise problem or not? Typically, that was the home user's problem. From the new area, starting from the SAM, this is not anymore the case. What does it mean? Enterprises are the victims. Be careful, you know, even organizations, even hospitals, you know, a lot of big names, at least my country, are the victims. So this is not anymore a home user's problems and issues, but the corporate problem. So this is SAM, and why this ransomware is so popular in the cyber criminal area. So I just wanted to highlight three major aspects. One is the exploit kits. So the cyber criminals built a complete nice infrastructure. Engler was the first one, but if you think about RIG and other new exploit kits, they build a complete enterprise class infrastructure. So that's very important element here is this ransomware area. The other one is Tor. Tor provides this secure communication when you would like to change the keys. Since we need to change a personal key to encrypt the files, we need a secure communication. So the Tor provides this option. And a Bitcoin. Typically, we need to pay in Bitcoins, so the Bitcoin gives this anonymization of this transaction. So therefore, this is also a very important key element. So these three key elements were more than enough for this new, I would say, area or revolution of this ransomware story. How this ransomware works and very quickly. So first, we need to identify the infection vectors. One of them is web, and the other very important, even more important, infection vector is email. So very important, you need to very carefully see the email, what you are seeing and checking, because that's very important. CNC communication, which is the command and control communication among the cyber criminals and the software. So somehow they need to control your PC's installation and software in order to change the communication to encrypt the specific key, and now after that process, everything is happening. Actually, it is changing by ransomware, so it's not in every time, but finally we will encrypt, software will encrypt the files, and we need to pay in Bitcoins. This is a typical situation. As I mentioned, this looks like a complete industry. So even there is a support center. You can call them, okay, what's the problem with the transaction? Oh, you failed. Okay, let me help you. This complete support service they have, even with the local language several times. So you can use the local language that, what's happened? I made a transaction and I couldn't see the result. So that's the complete industry, what they have. If we see the communication, we can see that typically it works at least based on the DNS transaction. So the domain name services is typically widely used. So at the beginning, you know, we had the IP-based filtering. It was quite easy to bypass. Cyber criminals moved to the domain name services. Even they moved to the so-called domain generation algorithms. So quite rapidly changing the domain names in time. As we see, DNS very widely used, almost in every case, with the only one exception, which is the SAM, which is really doesn't require any CNC communication. So even this looks quite dangerous in this situation. As I mentioned, this is really a tailored, fine-tuned, specific targeting one single organization. So therefore, it's so effective. Payment message is also widely used in DNS, requested by the DNS. Of course, several times the Tor is also happening. So let me review one of the most important exploit kits. This is one, a golden example, but others are followed that Engler exploit kit, which when was active, Tesla Crypt and Crypto was the most important ransomware software they distributed. So how it works, just imagine even a little bit older people are just browsing the internet, even on Internet Explorer. So this was the typical victim. And do you see the mouse somewhere here in the button, in the middle? the user just clicked a menu item, and that's all. He did nothing else. Just clicked on the menu item, and actually the attack happened. It is a real situation. We recorded a real victim. And do you see in the right-hand bottom corner, there is the ransomware attacked and now switched off the firewall. So quite dangerous. Do you understand my point? Almost everybody used, at least, Internet Explorer. Just imagine it's happening with your installation. And do you see now, we got an information alert, something happened, and if you see your personal files, like photos, docs file, or even Excel files, they are already encrypted. That's the problem. So this is how they worked. The user did almost nothing. There was a vulnerability in the browser, in the Flash and other Silverlight. This is also very important attack vector, but this is what the user can see during the attack. So it looks quite dangerous. So how they built a complete infrastructure. So we can see this Angular exploit kit. As I mentioned, they actually built a complete enterprise class infrastructure. They almost daily changed the IP addresses. It's not a joke. So they had a lot of load balancers. Even they built a complete exploit kit servers specifically just for the vulnerability. Very important, they didn't have to use the really day zeros. They had a few ones, but it was not needed. Why? Because the users are not patching the systems immediately. That's critical. If they have a few days in advance an attack options or vectors, they could attack the users. By the way, what do you think about the success rate? There was like 40%. Just imagine, almost the half of the audience is attacked using or visiting one single page. 40%. Because the Angular exploit kit could actually judge that what is the vulnerability existing on the Internet Explorer, and now targeting specifically the vulnerability. So a lot of other followed. RIG was also a Russian exploit kit, and the Nuclear is very quite nice follower, because they did a very nice job to actually hide the process, what they did. Why? Because they used the so-called domain shadowing, plus they checked the referrer, who was the original path in the communication, and if something has changed, they just step back. Okay, this is not my victim. Probably it is a security researcher wants to analyze me. So finally, that way they can bypass this kind of research. So that was really hard to validate and find the complete infrastructure. The next one is WannaCry. Probably I don't need to introduce that one. Again, patching is important. Why? Microsoft released the patch in March, and this WannaCry happened in June, even May. Do you see the point? Several months we had in advance to patch the system, and WannaCry was a very successful ransomware. Actually, they used the vulnerability in SMB version 1, and the Eternal Blue, if you heard about this attack, port 445, and randomly selecting the local users and external users as well. So finding another victim. That's the story. And finally, of course, encrypted everything. So the other very important new ransomware is Njetja, or NoPetya. We had a lot of different names, even almost 10 different names. And this also probably came from Russia against Ukrainian tax accounting software users, almost the whole country. It's a little bit funny, right? Because by law, you had to use this kind of so-called MEDOC software in order to upload your tax report. So therefore, almost everybody had to use that one. And this also used the password stealing plus propagation, but they wanted to control locally, so finally no external TCP scan or actually just used local scan, but finally find another victims. This is quite high-profile attack again, and now let me introduce another very nice story. When I started my job in '99, we had a lot of very nice ransomwares. So probably you heard about Configure, one of them. Configure was one of my favorite malware because the owner of the Configure could actually control 15 million PCs. 15 million PCs. That's, I remember, as a top volume. Do you know what we can do with 15 million PCs? It looks like an army. Just show me one single enterprise can survive 50 million PCs attacks as a DDoS. We had a DDoS. So that area, at that time, we had a lot of problems with the macros. And we had actually successfully explained to the users why macro is not your best friend, but now it looks we need to repeat again. So let me introduce my system. Right-hand side, we have a victim, and the victim is just browsing on the web or actually downloading the email, doesn't matter. In the left-hand side, I already pre-configured one of the favorite tools, which is PowerShell Empire. If you heard about PowerShell, every Windows nowadays have this access, looks like a next-generation DOS, operating system. And the user, what he's doing, we're just downloading an Excel file. Is it dangerous or not? Almost everybody doing that every day. So the guy, he's very cautious about this security. He heard about, okay, we need to check the security posture of the given file. Okay, he downloaded and he checked against the virus total. Virus total understood as a reference. Be careful with the virus total because, they can guarantee that if you upload a given file, every single antivirus vendor will receive it. So therefore, cyber criminals don't use it because they wanted to keep their code as a big investment because they had to work a lot. Do you see? 2 out of 55 antivirus vendor could catch this kind of and understood as a malicious content or malware. Okay. They said, okay, it's a legitimate file. If we wanted to edit, and do you see, enable macro, that's the point when even we not just lost the one single PC, but even we could lost the whole organization. It's not a joke. If you don't have segmentation in the enterprise, because several times this is the case, that given PC could be like a door, an entrance to the hacker to visit other devices, even attacking to the Active Directory. That's really dangerous. So be careful with this segmentation. In the meantime, as you can see here, if the user enabled the macro, we got a session. So as a PowerShell Empire user, I got a session to the victim, and I can control everything. This is just one example how they use it, this given tool. Now I got a session, and I could rename it. But now using the PowerShell commands, I can take the control on the user level. I can do whatever the user can. Even I can download the file. So even I can see what is the current directory, which is the desktop directory, and do you see now I downloaded a file. Is it dangerous or not? Could be. It could contain very, very sensitive information, the file, as it is. But this tool is not doing that one. It's quite very good tool. So it is just going further, like changing the system rights. If you heard about UAC, User Access Control in the Windows system, now we can bypass the system. That system has 11 different methods how to bypass and get a user credential to the system credential, rights. So quite dangerous, this kind of situation. Why? Because there is another tool, the name is Mimikatz, if you heard about, which can actually dump the memory and the passwords as well. A French guy, a student actually, wanted to understand how the Microsoft stores the different passwords and hashes in the memory. And finally, he developed this kind of Mimikatz as a software. And now, if you see now, I'm starting the Mimikatz now. Do you see the result? I could dump even the password as well. If the Windows is not patched, I can see the password. But if the hash is dumped, that's more than enough. Hash is the same value like a password in several times in security point of view. Okay, so this is just a reminder. If you have a macro, please take it very seriously. But this is not just limited to the macro, but any kind of file which could be dangerous, could be an entrance to the cyber criminals. So don't forget the segmentation. Okay, let's review what we can do. And here I'd like to cover is the defense technology. But before going into the details, let me review and let me summarize the most important thing. So there is no silver bullet which can protect anything. We have a solution which do a lot of things, like in the most important, most updated versions, can check, do we have an encryption in high volume? Okay, we can send an alert and we can block this transaction, but there is no silver bullet. We can do a lot of things like prevent and the known ransomwares, but very important to think it over. What is the current security situation? Almost everybody can develop a software which nobody can judge in 0 time, I mean immediately. If I had a time on the weekend and develop a totally new software, even nobody can catch it as a malware. Why? Because every vendor needs time. Time is needed just for the investigation. And now we have this kind of architecture or structure. So as I mentioned, the most important vectors are the web. So here we have a web transaction and email, I mean phishing or spear phishing emails against exploit kits, and this is ransomware payload on the endpoint system. So we can have a protection on different layers. One of the most important one is email. So we need to focus on the email transactions, whether is it attachment or it is just a URL pointing to the exploit kit. These are the typical case nowadays. So even the email doesn't contain malicious content. So what we can do you see, this is a real example. Is it the real one? This is the spear phishing attack. If you are like a user, even you can think that, okay, that could be a legitimate email. So we need to very carefully see and check every URL if it is not fully automated. One solution could be that one, if our system actually can rewrite the given URL, showing or actually changing or actually deleting all of the URLs, and even we can show the users, did you expect a Chase Bank House portal, or is it like a game portal? Is it different? So we can actually ask the user, do you want to see, or let's block it. Other solutions could be totally drop if it is known malware, and it is even we can delete only the URL. This is one layer. And another very important layer, as I mentioned, the DNS. Domain name service is critical. So in this case, we can control everything which is connected to the DNS transactions. Why? Because as I mentioned, the majority of these ransomwares and malwares still use DNS, 91.3%. And even the organizations don't monitor the DNS traffic. Very important, very dangerous situation. How we can check it? So the DNS, using the DNS, we can have additional proxy features, but based on the DNS, we can make it clear decision, whether is it good or bad. REST could be proxied. So that's the theory, and but using the DNS, we call it as a port agnostic. doesn't matter which kind of transaction we are talking about, but DNS is there, is starting with the DNS. How it works, if the user is clicking to the given link, now we can see that, okay, we can block it, because if it is a known bad site connected to the ransomware attack, we can block it and informing the user, sorry, this is not your target device. By the way, we acquired an open DNS. If you would like to protect your home users, there is a free of charge service using currently the open DNS. We call it as a parental service. If you would like to protect your kids, against the ransomwares, and you can see the logs here as well. What happened? Okay. The other very important layer is the host-based solution protection, and here I'd like to cover again and remind you that definitely we need to change the strategy. Why? Because previously there was the case we spent like 90% of the prevention phase. But we see that actually everybody can prove it. Everybody can develop the code which bypass any kind of security solution. So therefore, we need to focus not just on the prevention phase, but what will happen regarding the response. So the leader, Peter Sondergaard, mentioned we need to change the strategy in the industry, because like a 40% split would be much better. So our system does the same. Actually, we do the best how to prevent the known bad sites and known bad malicious content, even files, but it is not enough. Definitely we need to monitor. If you are saying, okay, I need PDF, Excel file in my business work, okay, this is your decision. What you can do is just monitor or track down every single file which went through all of the even firewall or next generation IPS, whatever we have. That's very important. This is like, I'm completing my homework, if you understand my point. Okay, why is it possible? So if you think about, this is the new, not so new, but Jigsaw ransomware, and the user is downloading. If it is totally new, developed by yesterday, in my hotel room, just imagine the situation. There is any chance, not by Cisco, not any vendor, to catch it, because we need time. So definitely we will have victims. If we have one single file we can analyze, we have much better chance to check it and reclassify as a malware. But definitely some minutes are needed in order to check this kind of vulnerability. Do you see? Now we have victim. Nobody can guarantee there are no victims in the future. So that's the situation. If we have a first file we can analyze, much better the chance to actually block it immediately. So that's the strategy. I think it's quite very correct, and that way we can guarantee that no any new users will be the victims. How we can do it, I don't want to go into the details, but here we have a process level inspection. So in this case, you can check every single process, what he's doing in a single time. So what kind of generating a file or communicating to the network. So therefore, we can block or quarantine this given file in one single place and quarantine that one. And here, if you see immediately we block that one, we can see the complete picture. Who generated given file, what is the environment, what if it is signed, I mean with the certificate, you can see the complete picture on these ones. So finally, unfortunately I have bad news. There is no silver bullet. We need to somehow protect our system, but we need to guarantee that we need to track down all of the files which went through all of the firewalls. So definitely ransomware is the huge business for the cyber criminals. So don't forget, it's focusing on that one. We are here to support you with the local colleagues. Even I can visit here. So thank you very much for your time.